We're going to move to our last speaker. It's someone that is a beautiful god sister of ours who sits in the background, disappears, but is always there when you need her. She's sitting in the, I think she's sitting in some countryside somewhere in Buxton. Oh, the Buxton water comes from there where she is. And she's an amazing Kirtaniya. She's understood the heart of Srila Gurudeva. I believe when I speak to her, I feel very inclined to speak to her and feel close to Srila Gurudeva when she speaks. So it is none other than our Lavanga Lata Didi from UK. Hari, Hari, Hari Bol.
Hari Bol, Dandavat Pranams, everybody. Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyeva Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Sharakaya Chakshunmritam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Gurave Gaurachandraya Radhikaye Tadaraye Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tadabhaktaya Namo Namaha. Dandavat Pranams, everybody. I've been taken on a whirlwind today, and thank you so much to everybody who's spoken. Raghava Pandit Prabhu, I honestly, I can echo what Yashodanandan Prabhu just said. You know, the laughing and the crying, and you just took me on a journey. And actually, without you knowing it, you took me on a journey that kind of reminded me of so many connections, actually, because when you were talking about 96 and when Srila Gaur Govinda Maharaj left, that was when I just met my husband, who was my first guru, if you like, because he brought me to Krishna consciousness, and he loved Srila Gaur Govinda Maharaj so much. His name is Sundarananda Prabhu, and he's in France. He's a French devotee. And I remember him crying, standing in a guest house. We were actually in Singapore, and he was crying and crying and crying. And I was like, what is this? I don't understand. Why are you crying, you know? And he was crying with regret that he had left that association that he'd had in Bhubaneswar, and he'd left the association of devotees. But I'm eternally grateful for that, because, you know, he came and got me from a nightclub in Hong Kong, you know, like that's how we met, and that's how he brought me to Krishna consciousness, and he gave me Bhagavad Gita. And it was when I read Bhagavad Gita that I was like, oh, this is what I've been looking for, you know. So you took me back to hearing about Srila Gaur Govinda Maharaj, and we were staying in Singapore, and we were going in Little India, and I was going out and getting like a jasmine garland and offering it to a picture of Srila Gaur Govinda Maharaj. This is after he left, and listening to his tapes was the first Harikatha I'd ever listened to, you know. So yeah, it was beautiful. And then, you know, you tying that up with Srila Gurudev, and your, you know, Srila Gurudev's history, life history, you know. And I can't glorify Gurudev, like, you know, I don't know anything about Guru Tattva. And actually, when I listen to you all speaking, you know, all the devotees that have got such a history of being with their Gurudev, like I get a bit of vertigo, you know. I just can't quite understand how I came into contact with that, but I did, you know. My logical mind can't understand it. And you know, when we were listening to Sripad Bhaktivedanta Van Maharaj, you know, he was giving us the life history of Srila Rama Gosvami Maharaj, and like the Vaishnava's Leela is like extraordinary, you know, and I feel like a sense of vertigo when I hear it. And but anyhow, I did come into contact with Srila Gurudev, and goodness knows how, but I did. And what I'm beginning to understand now, 20 years on, is that, you know, at that time, what you mentioned about Srila Gurudev traveling around in 96 and wanting to hear about all the pastimes of Srila Prabhupada and all the Srila Prabhupada devotees, their experiences. What I'm now realizing 20 years on is that at a time when I met Gurudev and I was completely new, there were and I was hearing all these amazing things that Gurudev was speaking on Brajmandal Parikram. There were devotees there who were ready to hear that, you know. They were ready to completely surrender and give their lives again, like they had for Srila Prabhupada. And I'm in awe of that. I'm in awe of that, and I'm in awe of how I came into, how on earth was I there? It's like this prem, what did you call it? Prem Yuga, and like a wave, So I'm like this tiny little fish that's just been, somehow I got caught up in all that, and that's my experience. So I just wanted to share with you how Gurudev made me feel, because that's all I can share. I can't share, I don't know Guru Tattva, I don't know these things, but I just wanted to share a little bit how he made me feel and how intimate that was, So I was lucky enough to meet Srila Gurudev in New Mayapur in France, and then shortly after went to Rajamandal Parikram. And, it was 97, and it was a time when he was still going out on Parikram. And, even in New Mayapur, he kind of just captured my heart. And I literally had only been with the devotees for a few weeks. I didn't know anything about the philosophy or anything, but I remember going into his room, and I was like, oh, I'm going to ask him a question, And somebody, I think Brajanath Prabhu, or I think maybe Jayantakrit Prabhu, he's now Shiladvaiti Maharaj. He said, oh, this girl wants to ask you a question. So I'm like, yeah, I'm this stupid question was like, how can I help my husband to be a better devotee or something? It was like so arrogant. But he just looked at me, and I burst into tears, like spontaneously. At that moment, it was like I'd taken a breath for the very first time. It was like I'd been holding my breath for the whole of my life, and suddenly I took a breath, and the relief was unbelievable. And I just cried and cried and cried. I couldn't actually get my question out, even though I was trying really hard. And in that moment, Gurudev, he kind of showed me that he could see me, It was like I was seen for the very first time. And that was beautiful. And then, so I was captured, completely captured. And I was like a little girl again, And then I went to Brajamandal Parikram, and then I arrived in Mathura. And like Radhika Didi a couple of weeks ago, she was talking about, that look, you're waiting for that look from Srila Gurudev, all you needed was that look. And I was just at the beginning of that journey, and there were all the devotees around me. Gurudev had gone away for somewhere, and he was returning. So they were down at the bottom of Keshavji Gaudiya mat, and everyone was excited. And when he entered the mat at the bottom, like there must have been 50 devotees around him, and I was at least 50 yards away from him. But he gave me a glance, and it felt like, oh, I've come home, I mean, what I'm trying to describe is that he just gave me a glimpse of that, and I realized when Sripad Bhaktivedanta Van Maharaj was speaking, and he was talking about Srila Vaman Maharaj, then Santosh, when he came and he was like, no, this is my home, I'm staying here. And I'm like, okay. So Gurudev was just giving like a little glance of that. One day, maybe I'll actually really genuinely feel like that and surrender, but just at that point, that was just an amazing experience as well. So Gurudev also, he made me feel like I was his daughter. And one of the ways in which he did that was when I asked for Harinam. I went into his room and I said, oh, Gurudev, will you give me Harinam? I didn't know what I was asking for at all. And he really let me know that, like he was quite heavy with me, and he looked at me, and I'm not going to be able to do it properly, but he was just like, do you know what is Harinam? And then he goes, it is not a toy. He was so heavy, and I ran out of the room crying. And but at the same time, although he was heavy and it was upsetting, like he let me know in that moment that he could see in front of all my duplicity, all my kind of sense of what I am and who I am. He could see all beyond that, and he let me know that. And at the same time, every time he did that kind of operation, it was always done with so much love as well. Even though he was so heavy, there was so much love in it that I felt completely accepted at the same time. It was like he just let me know in that moment, yeah, I can see all the nasty, dirty, horrible things in your heart, all the things that you're just so incredibly embarrassed and ashamed of. I can see all that, but you're still my daughter, you know? And that mood of intimacy, it's never left me, you know, and that's how I feel about him. You know, he made me cringe at that moment, but it was also like overwhelming relief that I was seen and accepted, you know. What else? What else can I share with you? Oh, Parikram. So I know that you've all probably got loads of memories of Parikram, so I'm sorry that I'm taking up your time with mine, but hopefully they're like Udipan for you as well, you know, to remember. But somehow he made a connection with all those different places. So he, you know, I remember going to Kaliarada and Tirkadamba, being at the foot of Giriraj, and Gurudev made a connection, and it was just by being with him there, or it might be by a glance, or, you know, I had moments when like Raghunath Prabhu, he was talking about how all our acharyas are manjaris, you know, and I had a moment, I remember sitting in class one time, and I was sitting next to Vishaka Didi, and I was like, is it wrong to see that he's not like a man, you know? And and he was so graceful and so beautiful, you know, and he just gave some little impression of that world. And he, every place that we went, especially that first year in Parikram, I remember bowing down my head, like Vishaka Didi had said to me, oh, you know, you can't come to Vrindavan by train or by plane, you know, and it was such a mystical experience, you know. And everywhere I went, you know, I'd heard Gurudev say, you know, our goal is Radha Dasham. I didn't know what Radha Dasham was, but I just remember praying for that because Gurudev had said, pray for that. But he made that connection with all those places and made me feel like, oh, Giriraj is mine, you know, Yamuna is mine. So he just gave like a little impression of that. And I'm also really grateful for the morning program. Like we would sing all the ashtakams and, you know, Manindra Vindavandite and, you know, Damodarastakam. And now I'm so grateful for that because my actual practice is so weak. But then that time has given me those ashtakams and some of those prayers, that seriousness at that time. Like now I can pick those prayers up again. And I'm so grateful for it because my actual practice is so weak. But, you know, he made those connections with all of that at that time. And just also knowledge of our goal, you know, like I didn't come through ISKCON. I didn't know anything of the philosophy. And now I understand that I was sitting there listening to these amazing, beautiful pastimes, Damodar Leela, and, you know, at Tirkadamba, like the Rupa and Sanatan Gosvami, and how they cooked the sweet rice. And, oh, it was actually Radhika, wasn't it? Anyway, I can't tell Leela at all. I can't tell these, but something was sown in my heart. You know, I was listening to those Leelas and the philosophy as well. Like, I can't speak it. I haven't absorbed it properly, but somewhere inside me, I know what my goal is, you know? Like, I know that I'm not gonna go off and worship Narayana or something, you know, like my goal is to worship Radharani and to serve her, you know? And Gurudev always gave like great hope about that. He used to talk about, you know, if a young boy wanted to marry Princess Diana, you know, and how hopeless that would be, like if a beggar in the street wanted to marry Princess Diana. But he used to talk about how he'd have greed for that. So he gave that aspiration that we should have greed for this thing, even though it's so high. What else can I tell you? He was also so caring. You know, I remember staying at the foot of Giriraj in Modi Bhavan, and I remember the very first year I was there with Hari Priya Didi, and we'd found somewhere to sleep in like a corridor or something. Anyway, we were just setting up our little mosquito net and stuff, and Gurudev came out of his room and he beckoned to us, you know, and he wanted to know if everybody was okay. You know, he wanted to know if everybody had found somewhere to sleep. I think he was aware that the Parikram party was growing bigger. And I'll never forget those moments, you know. I'll never forget coming to Mathura, like Raghava Pandit Prabhu, you spoke about, you know, coming back to see Srila Gaur Govinda Maharaj, and after a long train journey, like you'd see him and you'd be all fresh again. And I had that experience coming from the UK one time, arriving in Mathura, and I'd flown into Delhi and I'd gone to Mathura by train, and then I got on a rickshaw and arrived at Shikeshavti Gaudiya and ran upstairs to see Gurudev, and he'd given darshan already and he was just going in, and so I'd kind of missed him, but then he was just going in, and he was so merciful, and I was in such a state, you know, my life is like, I don't know how to be a devotee at all, and I'd come and I was just, I was all over the place, mentally, physically, you know, emotionally, all over the place, and I just went, Srila Gurudev, I'm here, and he brought me into his room up at the top of Keshavji Gaudiya Mat, and he didn't say anything, and he didn't need to. He just sat on his bed, and he reached over and got a box of prashadam, and just, I think it was prashadam from Jagannath Puri, maybe it looked like that, and he just gave me some prashadam and gave me blessings, and then he gave me the box and told me, and he kind of indicated to put it underneath his bed, you know, and then I paid my obeisances and went out, and I just sat outside his room cherishing that prashadam, just going, oh yeah, now I'm here and I can be, yeah, that prashadam was so purifying, and you know, it just he made me feel like everything was all right. Whatever state I was in, he always made me feel like everything was all right and everything was going to be all right. So he's my beloved father, and more than that, and I'm so grateful to be given a chance to share those memories. And I'm just, now 20 years on, like I haven't been able to take his instructions. I don't understand his instructions, his moods, anything, but I'm so grateful for having this Sangha on Zoom, because like I'm stuck in the middle of the hills and trying to do a little bit of sadhana amongst, you know, my Kali Yuga life. And it's so encouraging to hear other people's stories of how they came to Krishna consciousness and the connections that they've had with our amazing acharyas and the journey that they've been on. You know, it gives me hope and it gives me connection with you all. And I really hope one day I can serve like you guys. That would be amazing. Anyway, I'm asking for your blessings, especially like we just started this Kartik month, and yeah, it's so lovely to remember all those places that we went with Srila Gurudev, and I'm really grateful for your association. And sorry if I've gone on a little bit, and thank you very much for letting me share that. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripasindhubhya cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha.
Let me unmute myself, because obviously I've been talking and I'm just on mute. Firstly, thank you so much, Lavanga Didi, for sharing such beautiful pastimes. Actually, it's funny, like when you were saying like that glance, you know, we've all had that glance and we've all had that moment, but it's so different and embedded in so many different impressions for us in so many different ways. And that glance is like so personal. It was never like, oh, that's the one glance that everyone gets. It was, no, I'm going and I'm gonna look at you specifically because you're asking for me to look at you. And you know, Gurudev, Gurudev was not just Gurudev, any Vaishnav anyway, but Gurudev in particular. You know, you were talking about, I don't personally think there's anything wrong with you. I'm talking about myself in terms of like, there's so much anartha in my heart, like it's unbelievable. But Gurudev, he took that one part that was okay and was like, that's okay, I will have that. And he gave us that moment, and he gave us that okay, it's okay, it doesn't matter how terrible you are, I'm with you, and I'm going to stay with you. And so a part of us, when we're going through this journey of being separated from Srila Gurudev for 10 years, it's kind of like, it's okay. You know, I'm learning now that it's okay because he's beside me, he's not going anywhere. And you know, these memories are, you know, he didn't just give them for the sake of giving them, he gave them so that he could give these impressions that now you can remember Govardhan Puja and Anukut, what it was like, and go back to that place with Srila Gurudev. And so we're so fortunate to have this memories and these personal impressions. I mean, I wasn't fortunate, but to hear these personal impressions that have been given on so many of Gurudev's and Guru Varga devotees and disciples, that I'm able to actually even relish from it. So thank you so much for ending our Katha this week, of remembering our Guru Varga so beautifully. Thank you for reminding me of Srila Gurudev's time with us.